What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. I am Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online, and I'm joined, as always, by senior reporter Zach Albaverdi. We've got a lot to cover in this show. We think you're really going to enjoy it. We've got some football news to discuss, but also we've got a big special guest who's going to come on and talk Gators basketball recruiting with us. And obviously, them Gator boys were hot on the court, and they're hot on the recruiting trail right now, especially in this busy transfer portal window right now. So there's a lot to discuss. We'll get into that in a minute, but first we've got to start off, as always, by paying some bills. We got a big sponsor here, and Zach's got a really cool product. Zach, take it away.
Absolutely, Keith. Appreciate the intro and definitely want to encourage all Florida fans to head over to BigGameUSA.com to get your hands on the official new game ball for the Florida Gators in 2025. You can use the code Gators Online to get 10% off your entire order and free shipping for a limited time. The Gators designed this ball with Big Game USA to ensure they're comfortable with it, and it's truly one of a kind. You can start your collection of official game balls today. Perfect to order for tailgates, autographs from your favorite Gators, or gifts. And you can head over to BigGameUSA.com and be the first to own it with the code Gators Online. And very snazzy ball that they've made for Florida.
I love it. I tell you what, Zach, I would have killed for something like that as a kid. Literally would have pushed you in front of a moving VFI truck in Gainesville for one of those things. I never forget, I was a little student at J.J. Finley Elementary School right off campus in Gainesville. We had a cheerleader for an intern, and she came in and one day she brought us all those little miniature Gator footballs. I don't know I think that was the peak of my life. Okay. It's been all downhill since kindergarten. Zach, one thing you and I never do is we never complain about how busy we are, because we know we're fortunate to have these jobs, right? I mean, everybody listening is probably working for real, right?
Yeah.
But the last couple weeks, you're trying to mow your lawn, you're trying to buy a car for your kid. I'm trying to work on my short game, and stuff is happening every day. And the big news this week, which to me kind of came out of the blue, I'm not sure how you felt about it, was that DeAndre Robinson, a rising true sophomore defensive lineman for the Florida Gators, entered the transfer portal on Thursday. I was not expecting that. Again, I don't know whether you were or not, but that was significant news for a variety of reasons, Zach. You just had a great story today kind of explaining what it means to the defensive line group. So first of all, are we hearing anything that he might come back to Florida?
I mean, you never rule anything out, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. But it's certainly unfortunate for Florida because, as you said, this definitely was unexpected. I think hindsight's 20/20, and you can dig into things and look into what maybe led to this. But it does sound like everything that we've, from everybody that we've talked to, that it comes down, like most of these situations, to NIL. That's the new name of the game. And for Florida, it's just at a position that you really couldn't afford to have depth loss. And, DeAndre Robinson wasn't a projected starter, but he definitely was probably going to be number 2 in that rotation behind Caleb Banks. And he did start at the end of last season for Banks in the bowl game. So he was kind of the next in line for the Gators. And this was going to be an important year for him to get another season of development, kind of set himself up to be the starter in 2026. So now you don't have that, but you also don't have that depth as well. So Florida, I think, was already probably going to address the defensive line in the portal. We know that they wanted to, and now they definitely have to. And we'll talk some more about that a little bit later in the show after we talk to Joe.
Zach, I'm going to give my little spiel here, and then I'm going to get your take. And everybody knows I'm long-winded, but I do this thing called sting factor. How much did it sting? And, on a defensive line, I think sometimes, I remember during last season on the message board, people would say, why isn't Pyburn playing all 80 snaps? Why isn't, this guy playing more? And the fact is that the best teams in college football, and I hope I'm not mansplaining or talking down to anybody, but maybe some people don't know this. This isn't like the quarterback position. That guy's going to play the whole game, right? Unless you're blowing somebody out. You need a true rotation on the defensive line, because you need, and not just guys that you're throwing out there that just to have a body, guys that can play.
Yeah.
And you need 2 or 3 guys at every position, because when you get in those battles against Alabama, Georgia, Texas, you got to be fresh in the fourth quarter. The team that's fresher in the fourth quarter against the elite teams often is going to win that game. They're going to make the most plays in that fourth quarter. You're going to shut that team down on one end, and you're going to run right through them on the other. And so when you lose a player that's a second teamer, as DeAndre Robinson, sometimes I think the inclination for a fan would be, no big deal. He's a second teamer. We'll be fine. But there is some significance to this. And, Florida did sign some good, young, talented defensive linemen in the last class. Jeremiah McLeod is one of them. But the transition, Zach, from high school to college is as hard as anywhere on the defensive line as anywhere. It's physically grueling on these guys, right? Joseph Mbachu's not at UF yet. So, and he was raw to football anyway. He'd only played as a signing. He just signed. He's only played 1 year of football. So is he going to be ready to contribute year one? So Florida can obviously make some inroads, can kind of help alleviate this if they go get a player or two in the portal. I get that. But DeAndre Robinson's departure, should it happen, and like you said, it seems like it, we can't really diminish it. So to me, it's a fairly high sting factor. That was a lot to get to that. But what would you think? What would you say, Zach?
I mean, it's not good. I think the only thing that you can take solace in as a Florida fan is, one, that he wasn't a starter, and that you have Caleb Banks at his spot. But two, that the other guy that he was competing with for the backup role, who also started a game last season for Caleb Banks when Caleb Banks was out, is Brian Taylor Jr., who is a senior. Now he's a JUCO transfer, so he hasn't been in Florida's system developing for 4 years, but he was on the team last year. He got the start against Texas, and I think having him now probably become the number 2 there for sure is at least good that you got an upperclassman there in that role. If you were having to now immediately turn to either another underclassman like Robinson, who's a sophomore, or even a freshman, that would be a little bit concerning. Now Florida does have what we think 2 freshmen behind Taylor. You mentioned McLeod and Joseph as well. So they've got what I think will be 4 bodies there, but probably only 2 that that you can count on. I don't know how much McLeod will be ready to contribute as a freshman. So from that standpoint, it just hurts from depth. Like Robinson was going to play. He was going to be in the rotation regularly. He was going to be in on important downs, and they were going to develop him for the future as well. So now Brian Taylor is going to get all those snaps and all those reps, and if he does well, that's great, and it's fantastic for Florida. However, he's a senior, and all that experience and all that stuff is only going to benefit him for 1 year, and then he's going to be out the door. Whereas a lot of those reps that would have went to Robinson would have set him up for 2026 and beyond. So it just is unfortunate. And like you said, now you got to go out and get a guy from the portal who has now maybe had that year or 2 of development at a Power 4 program or maybe even an SEC program, so that when he gets in and you lose Banks and you lose Brian Taylor, you try to get somebody that was going to be as good or better than Robinson would have been stepping in. But for the short term, I don't know if they'll find that in the portal, but we're going to find out.
Yeah, Florida had kicked the tires some with Miami defensive line transfer Josh Horton. He's going to end up at Georgia. They're working on someone else, a young man from Baylor, and we're not going to give too much away because we actually have to sell subscriptions. That's kind of how we make our money at Gators Online. But we do have a portal story if you want to go check that out right now, and that is at GatorsOnline.com. Blake Alderman, who just joined our staff last week after 8 years with 24/7, kick and tail already, got a great story that you can read if you sign up. And we're not salesmen, but right now you can join Gators Online for $1, get you 3 months. You can't really beat that, to be honest with you. $1, 3 months, and you'll be able to read that story along with many others. So go check it out. When you read it, I think you're going to feel a little bit better about the defensive line situation. Florida's bringing in someone that's got talent, and he's got multiple seasons. Zach, I'm actually less concerned about 2026 with Robinson leaving, even though he would have been a starter probably in 2026, because I think they've got enough time between now and then to, if Joseph Mbachi, the talented true freshman, develops, if Jeremiah McLeod, the talented true freshman, develops, you're going to lose Banks and Taylor, but you may be bringing in a portal guy or two this cycle. And then also you can bring in a portal guy or two next winter. Zach, we got a special guest, man.
Yeah, well, speaking of portal, it's been a busy portal season for our guy Joe Tipton, who joins us now. We're lucky to get him on the show. My man's working the phones nonstop. We got him to put it down for a segment here with us, man. We appreciate you taking the time.
No, absolutely, guys. Happy to be here. It's an exciting time to be a Florida fan and basketball, that's for sure.
Joe, is it a little humbling? You're only the third best looking guy on the show.
Very, very humbling.
Zach and I hate to put people to shame, but what are we supposed to do with this God-given talent?
Well, before we get into the questions with you, Joe, what is this time of year like for you? Just when March Madness comes and goes, and everybody's dialing the college basketball, it doesn't stop for you when the season ends. It just begins.
Oh, yeah. No, it's this year. I knew there was going to be quite a bit of movement, a lot of roster turnover, a lot of, players changing teams, especially with the NIL component of today's game, right? It's kind of like, job searches for people. People are always bouncing from job to job for more money, similar to players, because that's what it's turned into. They're always looking for another opportunity. So, yeah, it's nonstop. I mean, it's difficult to keep up. Just because there's players that you don't anticipate transferring. A lot of the time you can see like, okay, he's sitting on the bench. He's not getting a lot of playing time. Yeah, he'll probably transfer at the end of the year. You'll hear rumblings of players that are going to transfer. Or if you're a really good mid-major player and you average 20 points a game, then yeah, you're probably going to go get, $800,000 to transfer to a Big 12 school. But yeah, no, this portal season has been, it's been fun, but it's been hectic at the same time.
Yeah, man. It's as Keith was saying when we opened the show, there's been no days off. And obviously the staff has had to get right after it after they won the national title, maybe a little bit behind some other schools. I think the most important player that they had to replace, everybody would say, would be Walter Clayton Jr., their first team All-American. And they also lose Denzel Aberdeen to the portal, which you can touch on. But they had to find a point guard for next season, and they get Xavier Lee. What do you think about his addition and just how that recruitment played out for Florida, going once again head-to-head with St. John's for a point guard?
Yeah, definitely. I think St. John's, they got him on campus first. They tried really hard to close on him. They really, really wanted him. Obviously, Florida was in the mix. He visited Kansas. Duke was considered as well, but it's a big-time pickup for Florida. Obviously, a wide-open backcourt next year. Obviously losing Walter Clayton, but also losing quite a few other key guards as well. So he's able to come in, be the starting point guard. That's the plan, and, make a big impact on this team. Obviously, there will be an adjustment, him coming from the Ivy League, in Princeton to now competing in the SEC. That might take a little time. So Florida fans, don't judge him off of, the first few games of the season. It's going to be a jump for him. But I think it's one he's up for.
Joe, another addition for Florida was Ohio transfer guard A.J. Brown. And, that's a guy that people didn't really know as much about. He maybe not one of the bigger name transfers, but a guy that Florida zeroed in on pretty quickly. What can you tell us about him as a player and how you think he'll fit into this offensive style in Gainesville?
Yeah, I think he's a guy that he's obviously from Orlando. His younger brother's on the team, Isaiah Brown, who's a freshman, former 4-star recruit that had a limited role. But brothers, AJ is a guy that he's going to give you, maximum effort. He's got love for the Florida Gators. He is a culture guy that is ready to come in, bust his tail, get as many minutes as he possibly can. He's not going to be the star of the team. He very well could be, but that's not, I don't think what, the Florida staff is expecting him to be. I think they're expecting him to be a role player and just a guy that is bought in to, building what Florida wants to be and obviously go back to back. But obviously, I mean, not trying to downplay his game. He's a really talented player, almost averaged 13 a game at Ohio this past season. Shot, I think, 39% from three as well. And obviously, they love to shoot the three ball. The Florida Gators do. So I really like the pickup for him as well. And it makes it even better that he gets to play with his brother. So really cool moment.
Zach, you're on mute, I think.
Yeah, and obviously another guys reconnecting was Xavier Lee and Thomas Houtt, two former high school teammates. So, well, Tipton, as you guys know, Florida's not done in the portal yet. Still some other pieces that they want to fill. You've been out in front, as you always are, on two of the guys that the Gators are going after, and Stojakovic and Cloud. How heavy are those recruitments in terms of interest from other schools, and what would it mean for the Gators to add one or even potentially both of those guys to this class?
Yeah, so the first guy, Cal transfer Andres Stojakovic, probably one of the top players available in the portal, a big-time wing prospect, former McDonald's All-American. He's the son of multi-NBA champion, multi-NBA All-Star Peja Stojakovic. So he's in the portal. He just visited Illinois. He's considering a few other schools like Florida. As far as I know, a visit has not been scheduled to the Gators. They're in the mix. They're trying, to get in there. Illinois has got a bit of a lead now, but they're trying to make up some ground along with schools like North Carolina, Gonzaga, and USC as well. So I'd monitor that one, as well as Desmond Claude, the USC transfer. So two West Coast guys. Well, Des Claude, he's actually from Connecticut originally, but this past year played in LA with Eric Musselman in the USC Trojans. But obviously, we kind of touched on earlier, Florida has a pretty wide open backcourt right now outside of, A.J. Brown and Xavier Lee. They got a lot of, more work to do. And obviously, they're on two of the top guys here. Yep. I think with Desmond Claude, it's still pretty early. He hasn't set any visits to my knowledge. He just entered the portal literally on the last day of it closing, which was, I believe, Tuesday. Just earlier this week. So just now starting to get the ball rolling on that recruitment. But those are definitely two guys for Florida fans to keep tabs on.
Joe, I just wanted to get your general thoughts on Florida's portal success. I mean, you kind of touched on the guys in this class, and you could just in general terms, this cycle, previous cycles. I mean, when you look at the teams that Todd Golden was put together, Walter Clayton was a transfer from Iona. Will Richard came from another school. Elijah Martin came from FAU. Ruben Chinyelu came from Washington State. I mean, that's the kind of the era in which we're in right now in college basketball. But, obviously they just won a national title. So they're doing something right. But your general thoughts on Todd Golden and his staff and their success in the portal. And what do you think? I mean, are they just out evaluating people? What would you say?
100% they are. I mean, elite coaching staff. The way they were able to build this team, getting guys that, maybe a little bit under the radar, guys that, other schools might have passed on. Like, this isn't a team. This isn't a roster built on 5-star McDonald's All-Americans. You know what I mean? Like, this is a guy like transfer up guys from mid-majors or, like international, like Alex Condon coming over from, the NBA Academy, right? This is a team that was built on the staff identifying talent that they knew that they could develop in their system. And they have such a forward way of thinking, right, with their analytics base and, their style of play and just how they've been able to build this roster. It's very impressive. Yeah.
And on that note, Keith mentioned the national title that they won. What type of impact do you feel like that has on the recruiting trail? Does Florida, does that carry more weight now when they get in the mix with prospects? Does it give them more bargaining power that they are the national champs? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah. I mean, Florida has always been an attractive place, like the brand, the history there, right? But now even more so. The recency of the national title literally earlier this month, like when Todd Golden walks into gyms now, like when AAU starts up and he goes to see some of these high school guys, like all eyes, like you'll see kids around the gym like point back, that's Todd Golden. He's the national, he's a national champion. Like you're going to see those reactions. And then more players are naturally going to be more interested in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Because of what they've been able to do this season. And it's also a testament Todd being so young, 39 years old, the youngest coach to win the NCAA tournament since I think like 1985.
That's
so
right.
like him being able to come in, do that in such a young point in his career. And I think the youngest coach previously was Billy Donovan. So how about that? Yeah. So, I mean, just incredible. And I think that he's going to be, he probably already was prior to this year, but even now, like when he walks into those gyms, other coaches are going to fear him when he gets in recruiting battles.
Yeah, he's got the juice now.
Yeah. Last question from me, as Zach may have something he wants to add, but you and I have talked many times. You love basketball. You're not just a guy that covers it. You're a true junkie. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, Florida has now been to 5 Final Fours this century. Florida now has 3 national titles this century. Kentucky has 1. All right. Florida is tied for second in national titles since 2000 with, I believe, North Carolina and Duke, trailing only UConn. Maybe historically Florida isn't a quote-unquote blue blood, but where would you put this program among the elites right now this century, which is really the modern era for most of us watching?
Oh, at the very top, without question. Like what they've been able to do, like the most impressive thing to me is, right, like this year's roster, like they didn't, like the team that they just had, like they didn't have a bunch of NIL money. Like it wasn't like they were like some of these programs, like, Arkansas is very publicly known that they had, pretty deep pockets.
Kentucky this year.
Yeah. Like in Florida, like they had to budget, like they had to get some of these under the radar guys that bought in. And that's the hardest, like for me now in this age, like that's the hardest thing for some of these players. It's like, okay, I don't want to buy into a role. Like I really just want to be the star and I want to maximize as much money as I can make. So for them to be able to go out and recruit the right players and recruit that, in the proper system in which they want to play and the culture that they were able to develop this year to win a title, it's very impressive. It really is. And, I think this is just the beginning for Florida. Obviously the staff is, absolutely elite. And, I obviously I know they lost a couple of, head coaching jobs, which is great. That's a great sign for, it's a testament to what Golden has been able to do and pour into his guys. But it's a very exciting times to be a Gator fan. That's for sure.
No doubt. Joe, final thing I want to ask you, you mentioned Florida trying to reload. What are your thoughts just from a personnel standpoint on where this roster is at if the rest of the front court returns, talking Ruben Chinyelu and Alex Condon, and then right now where they stand with Xavier and Lee signed, A.J. Brown committed, I'm sure signed here any day now, and then the other backcourt guys that they have returning. They've got his brother as well, but then they're adding 2 freshmen, C.J. Ingram and Alex Lloyd. Yeah. Just what do you think of the makeup of the roster at this point, and maybe if they can add one or 2 more pieces, what type of contenders they would be next season?
I think they're going to be one of the top teams in college basketball. Obviously, I know like losing Walter Clayton, losing Will Richard, losing Elijah Martin, like if Condon stays in, right, like that's going to be like 4 pretty significant losses, right? But I think C.J. Ingram is an incredibly impressive freshman. Like Florida fans are going to love him. Like, I mean, former football player, dad's, like obviously very, familiar with the program. People are going to know, Cornelius Ingram, like he, to me, might surprise a lot of like people like this day and age. Like it's all about transfers, right? It's less about freshmen, but like CJ Ingram's going to make a huge impact next year. And I think Xavier and Lee is at the forefront of their success next year. And then like you mentioned, Zach, like the front court pieces, they're bigs, even like, Hanlott, right, Chinyelu, who's expected to be back. Like the retention is key. Obviously, I know Denzel Aberdeen left, went in the portal fine. They'll be able to go get other guards. But the future is definitely bright, without question.
No doubt. And you've been on top of it all, man. Great job this portal cycle.
Appreciate it.
I mean, it's your work is incredible. Let Florida fans, if they're not following you and they're missing out, let them know where they can follow your work, man, and stay on top of the news.
Yeah. Just on3.com. My Twitter and Instagram, both at Tipton Edits.
Yeah.
This is
like the Gator boys, that page stays hot.
Yeah, this guy's like the Walter Clayton of National Basketball Report. Actually, he might be the Pete Maravich. I mean, even when he has a slow day, he erupts for 30 points in the second half. Joe, thank you so much for coming on. And by the way, I want to tell everybody, Joe has always been helpful to us at Gators Online. He's always keeping us in the loop. He's a great team player. He's not just a superstar; he's a distributor as well. So, Joe,
appreciate
thank you so much, man. We love you.
A true Walter Clayton.
Yes.
There you go. That's a huge compliment. Appreciate you guys.
Take care, man.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
That's Joe Tipton from On3. Man, great stuff. You heard what he said about CJ Ingram, man.
Well, how about he says he thinks that this could be just the beginning of a floor. I mean, look, it's hard to predict these things, obviously. You know, once you win a national title, people say, Zach, it's so funny. You win a national title. People say, all right, now we can finally start getting recruits. Well, you just won a national title. You did something right. But for Joe to say these things, Joe's a huge fan of the sport, like he said, and he follows this closely. I mean, he kind of understands the pulse of things right now. So if he's excited about the future of Florida basketball, I think everybody listening should be excited. Would you agree with that, Zach?
No doubt. And some of those compliments spoke volumes. And to hear that from a guy that's in the industry and knows, that's big. I want to ask you what I asked him.
Oh, boy.
What are your thoughts on where this roster is at right now? If we assume that Condon and Chinyelu come back, Thomas Houck announced Thursday that he is returning to Florida, which was big news for the Gators. We know most of the backcourt at this point, but we expect that they're going to add, obviously, a couple more pieces. How far are they off from being where they need to be to contend for a title?
Yeah, it's a great question and an impossible one to answer. And you know far more about the team than I do. You know, you're replacing. Let's just take a guy. You start with, Walter Clayton. Obviously, he wasn't just a great scorer, but he was a solid distributor. And not only could he score, but he scored at the right times. He just had that clutch gene. Sometimes, I mean, does Xavier Lee have that? We don't know. He doesn't know that. Look, Xavier Lee may be worse. He may be better. I mean, honestly, you just don't know, is what I'm saying. The chemistry of the backcourt players. We don't know what kind of chemistry they're going to have. Will Richard and Walter Clayton played together for 2 seasons, right? And then Elijah Martin came in and was able to gel quickly with those guys. And then Elijah Martin, talk about an interesting guy, because he brought a toughness to the team. He brought a winning mentality to the team. He brought a guy that had played. He was a guy that had played in big games, scored 26 points in the Final Four for Florida Atlantic a few years ago when who'd they lose to? San Diego State. So he's a guy that had been there and done that. So you had all these unique pieces. Walter Clayton could shoot it from anywhere, but he had to have those pieces to be able to do what he could do. Denzel Aberdeen, Zach, as much feast or famine as he was, and he was a lot. Okay, he was a lot. Just following our message board, people would, you either wanted to hug him or jump off out of a window with some of the decisions he made. But the bottom line is he made a lot of big baskets for Florida. He made a lot. Did they win at Auburn without his 10 points that day? I don't know that they do. Did they, he came in when guys were hurt and put up big numbers. He had some key buckets in the Final Four. So you're losing 4 really good players. So one, you got to replace the scoring, and you got to replace the be able to distribute the ball. I think Xavier Lee, when you watch his video, he can distribute the basketball, right? That may be an upgrade in that part, but can he score? AJ Brown can score, but will it all work together? Those are things that you won't know early on in the season. You probably won't know till January, February, or March, frankly, But again, who's going to replace that toughness of Elijah Martin? Well, CJ Ingram told me, he said, that's the guy that I feel like I'm the most like. He said, I have that toughness, but can a guy in his first year have the toughness of a guy in his 4th year? So many unknowns, but it's exciting. It's exciting because, I've covered Florida or followed Florida for a long time, and you've covered them for a long time too. There hasn't been this much excitement about the rebuild of a team.
Oh my gosh.
In forever, maybe ever.
I mean, AJ Brown's commitment on Thursday, people ate it up.
Yeah.
You know, it was huge. I like the point you make about the chemistry, Keith, and I think one thing that could potentially help with that is the connections that could be there from previous stops with this team. You know, we mentioned Xavier and Lee having played with Thomas Houck in high school. That's a big deal. You got the Brown brothers. I had an opportunity to speak with A.J. Brown's father, and I had that story this weekend at Gators Online. But he talked about basically how they're going to kind of be counting on the Brown brothers to man the wing. And they really want them to kind of have an impact at that 3 spot, which was interesting because A.J. Brown joining the team meant less minutes potentially or likely for his younger brother, Isaiah. But Isaiah was fine with that because he wants to play with his brother. But, you know, you've got those two at that spot. So there's obviously connection and chemistry there. And I think the other name to watch, and we didn't ask Joe about it because his process is still playing out, but Ben Henschel, the Australian basketball player who's right now going through the NBA draft process. He's in Los Angeles training and staying with Alex Condon in a house. These two guys are both from Australia. They played in a tournament together representing the hometown where they're from. So they are friends. And Henschel is, you know, testing the NBA draft waters like Condon, but also is considering playing college basketball and, you know, coming over from overseas and following the route that we've seen a lot of other players follow. And if he chooses to go that route, Florida is considered one of the potential landing spots, if not the favorite to be his landing spot. So if you somehow it works out that you get him, if Condon comes back, there's some more chemistry that can be had on the court. So those 3 right there, I think, would be huge if Florida can manage to somehow do that.
Zach, I'm having a balance between basketball, football, recruiting. I mean, so the Henshaw kid.
Hey, I'm covering baseball too, man.
I know. No, hey, you're also younger and smarter than me too. What position does the Henshaw kid play? For everybody,
I think he's to me he looks like a 2.
Okay.
I mean, you know, or you know, maybe you know he looks like he could play the point as well, but I think he's a shooter, man. His tape is impressive.
You know, here's something else that we're not thinking about. I mean, the people listening are probably 4 steps ahead of me. But so even if Florida takes a step or 2 back at the 1, 2, and 3 positions, if Chinleyu, Condon, and Howe, and we know Howe's coming back, if those guys are all back, theoretically, they should be taking a step or 2 forward.
Yeah,
right?
And Micah Hanlogden's going to take a step forward too.
That's right. And so Hanlogden, so if he improves, if you get 3 more points a game out of him and his free throw shooting improves 20%, that's significant. He's always going to be a strong defensive presence and rebound machine. Thomas Howe, you think of the difference, the improvement he made from year 1 to year 2. Now, they obviously say that's the year you make the biggest improvement. But what if he makes something similar to that from year 2 to year 3? And you're talking all of a sudden he's, you know, a 14 to 15 point scorer, 7 to 8 rebound a game. I mean, that guy's a player, man. That guy's a player, and he's in the right place at the right time. Condon, obviously, you know, what if he's healthy for a full season? Chinleyu, the thing he has to work on is to become more of a scoring threat, obviously. But, you know, there were games when they went to him a lot and he had some dominant offensive performances. Yes. They just need more of that. But if those guys, those 4 guys, I didn't mean to leave Hanlogden out. If those guys continue to make progress, that also gives the new guys in the backcourt time to gel, time to develop some chemistry. So maybe in the early part of next season, Florida becomes a dominant interior team.
Yeah.
While that back, you know, a little bit of a shift there. But there's a lot of pieces. And I think what made this team so great this year, obviously Walter Clayton. But beyond that is that if a couple of guys were having off nights, you still had 4 other guys capable of putting the basketball in the hoop, right? And you know, so many Florida teams historically, you had Vernon Maxwell, maybe one other guy that could find the basket. And now you've got 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. I mean, again, we talked about Aberdeen earlier, and he's gone, but that was a backup that if you needed a bucket, he could get it. He had a big bucket in the championship game. So, you know, I think they've done a hell of a job of building a complete roster. Now, Obviously, they got to hope that Chinleyu and Condon decide to come back. But yeah, there's a lot of good pieces there. And Joe Tipton's got me fired up now thinking about it because as we just saw, there's very few things more fun than one of those hellacious basketball rides. I mean,
it's awesome.
I love football, but in some ways, because you got games that a couple games a week over a longer period of time, it is. It's an awesome run, man.
No, it is. Well, final thing on hoops before we get back to football. Joe Tipton mentioned your guy, Keith, CJ Ingram.
Yeah.
He said everybody talks about the transfers and we forget about the freshmen, but he said CJ Ingram's going to make an impact. You've got to know him well. Obviously, covered his dad too. He signed this week. It wasn't just Xavier Lee. The Gators officially made it pen to paper with CJ Ingram. How big is that to get him on board? And then what type of impact would you expect from him as a freshman?
Well, what I like about him, Zach, is, and we've seen this out of a lot of great players. A lot of high school teams, if you're 6'3", you have to play center because there ain't nobody taller than that. So you may be a Division I guard, but you don't have any choice. So even at Montverde Academy, which is a nationally known basketball program, CJ Ingram at 6'6" played everything from the 2 to the 3 to the 4.
Wow.
He played a lot of different spots, and I think he's going to be able to bring that versatility to Gainesville. So you're going to say, okay, CJ, this game we're going to need you to focus a little bit more on board work, on the glass. He's going to be able to do that. As he said, I've got that toughness gene in me, like a la Elijah Martin. You got to have guys like that. Elijah Martin's going to be one of those guys that I think when you look back, you don't win without a guy like that. And he was hot and cold at times too, but the toughness that he displayed, the fighting for loose balls, fighting for rebounds. He was 6'2", but played like he was 6'8" at times, right? And so if CJ can bring that kind of mentality to Gainesville, that's going to be a good thing. Now, he sees an opening. He knows that Florida's working the portal hard to bring in talented players to replace what was lost, but he sees an opening, and it's like when you're throwing those a chicken out to an alligator in a lake. That's him right now. He can see it, man. And here's a couple things else working in his favor. His father has been there and done that, right? Not only did he play football, but he also played basketball at Florida that one season with the guys that went on to win those 2 national titles. And he's very close with Torian Green. If Torian Green's not on that staff, who knows? I mean, you'd like to think that a Gator's a Gator through and through if you're a Florida fan, but Torian Ingram had a big role in that because he's close with Torian Ingram. He might as well be called Torian Ingram. He's so close to the Ingram family, but he is so close to Torian Green, and I think that not only is Torian Green going to be able to coach him at basketball stuff, but he trusts him. CJ trusts him. He's going to be able to guide him through the highs and the lows. So now he's got 2 guys in his inner circle that aren't just talking the talk, Zach. They've walked the walk. They know that CJ is going to have bad games, and they're going to know what to tell him to make sure one bad game isn't followed by 3 more bad games. So I think he's got so many things working in his favor. He's a little bit of a raw talent, sure, but the frame is there. Mo Collins, the great Gator offensive lineman, used to tell me.
Mo Collins, R.I.P.
He used to, yeah. What a fantastic guy, by the way. He had some great NFL stories too, but we'll get into that another time. But he used to say, Keith, man, I'm looking at the piece of clay before anything else. Well, CJ Ingram's 6'6", all right, and he can play like a guy that's 6 foot, or he can play like a guy that's 6'9". And there aren't a lot of guys like that.
No.
But we got to be patient because even that when you look back, even the greatest players in Florida history, those 04s, look back to that season where they played with Cornelius Ingram. Horford, 5 points a game. Noah, 5-6 points a game. Torian Green, not that much. They had to figure things out too, but he's got people in his corner that, again, are going to be able to navigate him through some, what are surely going to be difficult times. And so I think the sky's the limit for him.
And also navigate him through the highs too, right? Making
that's
sure
right. That's right.
When he has a great game. So,
right.
Well, before we get into our next topic, we're going to pay some bills real quick and encourage everybody to head over to roback.com and take advantage of our promo code. And the best way to describe Roback is the best fit best feel. For those who aren't familiar with it, they're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback has released so many items with their newly licensed game day collection, and it's fantastic. Novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and Q-zip designs from some of your favorite schools, including the Florida Gators. Nobody else on the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Roback has been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college athletes, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code Gators20 on roback.com for a generous 20% off all new customers. That's spelled RHOBACK.com, where you can get 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Gators20.
Yeah, I'll spare everybody. Actually, let me get back on the screen. I'll spare everybody the picture of me in my Roback Gators hoodie. But we do need to tell everybody, hey, if you like what we're doing or whatever, make sure you like and subscribe below. And
Please
feel
do.
free to leave a comment, positive, negative. I mean, like, I'll go through and delete all the negative ones. Don't worry about that, Zach.
You know what, though, Keith? It's amazing how many people come up to me and say that they watch us and follow us on YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, we love it. I'm glad that we have that YouTube audience because it's just another medium for us to kind of communicate with you guys and bring you news. But if you're not on our site, take advantage of that deal that we got going right now, man. $1 for 3 months.
Yeah.
It'll get you all the way to football season, and I don't think you'll want to leave when we get there.
Yeah. All right, Zach, what's next? What do we got?
We've talked about DeAndre. I think we got to talk about some of these visits that have gone down, including a safety that was brought on campus this week.
Yeah, Zaquan Patterson from Hollywood, Chaminade, Madonna, championship program down in the Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood area. He played at Miami. He's a true freshman, played a lot, and for some reason left that program. We don't even, is it even worth asking anymore? This is the new era now. People are coming, they're going. But he left Miami after one season. Ole Miss is involved. He visited there before he visited Florida. We think the Florida visit went well. We believe that NIL is certainly going to be a factor here and that Florida is well positioned in that area to give him a lot to think about. Tennessee is another school involved and perhaps Oklahoma State as well. But right now, again, look, it's always fluid in recruiting in general, but specifically in portal recruiting because things happen so fast. The window, you're not recruiting a guy over a year or 2 years or longer. You're recruiting him over just a few weeks. But we think right now that Florida is in a position where we can say we believe that Florida is a strong candidate. I'm not willing to say Florida's the favorite. We don't necessarily know that, but Florida is a strong candidate. Some people close to him think that he'd like to stay in the state of Florida. And Zach, another person close to him told me, they said, there's something there where he wouldn't mind playing Miami next year. So there's a little of that too. It's as if the rivalry needs more.
Let's just go all the way, right?
Yeah, I mean it's such a weird world, this NIL world. But again, we think Florida. They believe that there's a strong NIL situation on the Florida side, and we just got to see, and they've got to see, and he's got to see, and the people around him have to see what everybody else has to say. But Florida's certainly in there, and obviously, look, with the recent parting of the ways with Gregory Smith, who would have been the number two safety on the depth chart for Florida this coming season. Gregory Smith was a talented player, so you're losing a good one there. You've got to replace him with somebody that can play, all right? And maybe Zaquan Patterson's the guy. They're looking at some other safeties too, and as we mentioned, Blake Alderman of Gators Online has some of those guys mentioned. But right now, we're watching Patterson just so people know. You're not just recruiting one guy at a time. And if word comes out that right now they're also recruiting a safety from Utah, we'll say that. Does that necessarily mean anything's happening with Patterson? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you can't recruit one guy at a time, especially in this short window of time. Summer semester is going to start soon, right? So you're working to get guys in pretty quickly here. So you've got to recruit a bunch of guys because if it falls through with a guy like Zaquan Patterson, you got to have something in the hopper right then and there, right? So they're going to be probably recruiting, or not going to be, they are certainly recruiting and evaluating a number of guys. There was a former Purdue safety that told me the other day, hey, they've asked for my transcripts. I've got my transcripts and we'll see what happens. They told me they're just evaluating me at this time. So constant evaluations, constantly looking at transcripts and things like that to make sure a transfer is even viable from the academic standpoint. So there's always a lot going on. So even though it seems sometimes, Zach, like people seem to think Florida's moving in slow motion, we don't know that they are, quite frankly. I can't say that they are. There's there's definitely a lot of things going on. And also one other thing, general recruiting information, schools are guarded. How guarded a school is varies from school to school. Some coaching staffs are like, we don't care if any of this gets out. We're USC. We don't care. We're not scared. Other schools are a little bit more guarded. Florida tends to be one that is a little bit more guarded with their information, and a lot more guarded is everyone with transfer portal information, because the first visit, the second visit are so ultra important. You've got to make sure that guy gets there, and you'd like to keep it quiet. You'd rather other schools don't necessarily know you're bringing a guy in, because once they find out, that can certainly drive up the price. And sometimes a guy that's perfectly affordable becomes unaffordable because the price has been driven up. Doesn't mean Florida doesn't have money. But you attach certain values to certain players. I mean, Florida could afford to keep Gregory Smith. No question, Zach. You know this, and I know this.
Yeah.
They chose not to.
Yeah.
They didn't believe that what was being asked was what they were willing. They thought the value was. The values of the two sides didn't match up, is the best way to put it. And I'm sure there's some elements of that with DeAndre Robinson as well. But the money's there. But certainly Billy Napier and his staff are not going to throw it around for nothing. They're going to make sure it's a good fit both on the field and off. Now, you hit some and you miss some, but that's what the goal is, and that's what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and you mentioned the defensive line recruiting that they've done out of the portal, and then safety. I think you and I would both agree those were two needs already going into this cycle, and now definitely spots that they want to address. Keith mentioned the safety that visited. We've reported at Gators Online the defensive lineman that is scheduled to visit this weekend. Again, you can head over to gatorsonline.com and check out Blake Alderman's story. Portal Intel hosting a defender visit in the safety board evolving. Make sure you guys go and do that. Before we get out of here, it is NFL draft week. We are recording this on a Friday. We don't expect, as nothing is projected at least, for any Gators to come off the board in the second or third round. But then it's going to be a busy day on Saturday. Florida could have, right now they're projected to have 6 to 7 picks. But maybe that could get to 8, 9. If all the guys that have either been to the combine or been visiting with teams, if they all get drafted, they could maybe get to 10. I don't think that they will, but they're definitely not going to have one player drafted like they did last year, Keith.
You sure you don't want help with those draft stories? You got them all covered?
Yeah.
You're good to go? I'm going to turn my phone off. I'm just no, it's look, it's there wasn't, like we said all along, there was one All-American on the team, Jake Slaughter. There weren't many all-conference picks, but there were a lot of good players. I think Shamir DK and Elijah Badger, I think these are guys that can help people in the NFL. I think Shamar James can help people in the NFL. Brandon Crenshaw Dixon probably got to get a little stronger, but he's a guy that can play in it. So there's a lot of good players there that they're going to get a shot at the NFL. But I think for me, the two guys I'm watching most closely are the two receivers, because I thought both of them were probably better last year than I thought they were going to be, especially Shamir DK. I thought he was sensational. They're both super fast. And I think DK is a guy that can help an NFL team in a variety of roles, especially, not just pass catching, but special teams. Badger's a heck of a kick returner as well. So I'm excited to see what happens with these guys. I'm sure they're nervous as hell right now, Zach, waiting. Well,
and then, we got Jason Marshall as well, is another top prospect for Florida. Cam Jackson has got some 4th-round projections. If you had to say one guy, Keith, who do you think is the first Gator off the board?
Maybe Badger. Badger.
Okay.
Well, who do you have? Because, I just think Badger's got so much potential, and that yards after the catch stat that it keeps getting floated out there, or yards after first contact. I think the NFL. We always say this about the SEC. Like Florida needed more chunk plays to take that next step, because you can't just go 80 plays and 80 yards and 15 plays every time and expect to win. Too many things go wrong. That's the NFL. They need chunk plays. They need guys that can get you that extra yard or 2 or 3. And That would be my guess. But you mentioned, if I can just throw this out there, you mentioned Cam Jackson. I haven't talked about him much. I think that's a guy who could play in the league for a long time with his body and him. That he plays a position where they're not asking you to get in the backfield. They're asking you to kind of hold up your ground and blockers and all that. And he's a big, strong guy. And I thought he made a lot of progress. He could have gone pro after the 2023 season, but Reckitt was smart enough and he had good advisors that said, no, you need to go back one more year, prove yourself a little bit more. And he did. And I think that's a guy that I think is going to have a long career in the NFL. We may not hear his name much, but he's going to be a guy that's playing a lot on Sundays. Who do you think's going first?
Well, you might hear him first. He could be the first guy. I want to say my pick will be Jason Marshall.
Wow.
I think that his picks or his projections rather vary, but man, he was having a really, really good senior season before he got injured. And I think has obviously helped himself with the 40 that he ran at Florida's Pro Day. So I think that he ends up being the first guy that comes off the board. Likely going to be a defender, though, I would say. But
you think? Okay.
So
you follow it more closely than I do. I will say that.
So 6 guys, Keith, have received multiple projections. That's Cam Jackson, Shamir DK, Elijah Badger, Jason Marshall, Shamar James, and Brendan Crenshaw Dixon. So that's 6. We expect all 6 of those guys to get drafted. Well, then you got Montrell Johnson Jr., who was invited to the NFL Combine, Jeremy Crawshaw, who was invited to the NFL Combine, Graham Mertz, who was invited to the NFL Combine, and then Trequez Bridges, who was not invited to the NFL Combine but ran a 4.38 at Florida's Pro Day. Montrell's got a 7th-round projection. Bridges got a 7th-round projection. Crawshaw's actually got a 6th-round. Graham Mertz, to my knowledge, doesn't have any that I've seen. But I did report a story at Gators Online where some coaches spoke anonymously with NFL Network, and they think that he's got a chance to get drafted. So we think 6 go for sure. Montrell, then after that, Montrell, Jeremy Crawshaw, Bridges, and Mertz. Who out of those 4 do you think hear their name called, or all of them?
Boy, I like Montrell Johnson there. I think.
I definitely think he gets drafted. I don't know how you don't draft him. So productive in college, man.
Yeah, good, solid player. Crawshaw to me probably won't get drafted, but he's going to be playing in the NFL. I mean, I think he's too good of a talent not to be playing in the league. Mertz, I don't know if he'll get drafted or not, but he's going to get a shot to make a team. I'm
100%
convinced of that. And I think one of the things that's going to help him, and Zach, you interviewed him far more than I did, but he's highly intelligent, but not just intelligent, self-aware. And my guess is in any interview he's done with an NFL team, he's probably knocked their socks off. Seems like a high. I feel the same way about Shamir DK, by the way.
Yeah,
that's another one. I think just a kind of an upstanding guy that you're like would be a great locker room guy.
Both Wisconsin transfers.
That's right. Well, that's a Midwestern mentality, quite frankly. Obviously, and to point out, I've got Midwestern roots in Wisconsin. My granddad went to University of Wisconsin. My dad was from Wisconsin. But but I think Mertz. I think he brings a lot to the table, and I do think again the piece of clay, the skill set is there. It's a shame for him that you got hurt last year and really didn't get to see what kind of jump he could make. But he did make a big jump from year 3 at Wisconsin to year 4 at Florida. So, I think somebody will take a look at it, and not just take a look. I think somebody will give him more than one team. If he doesn't get drafted, I think his phone's going to be ringing off the hook with teams trying to get him in as an undrafted free agent, quite frankly.
And it's not a strong quarterback class as we saw.
No.
Opening round.
Yeah.
So maybe he's got a chance to sneak in at the 7th round.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to watch it play out. I'm with you. I think Johnson gets drafted for sure.
And I hope so. And I want to point out one thing. The record for Florida draft picks, I believe, is 1978 with 10. Now the draft was was bigger back then. There were more rounds, but 10. And that team, which was 78 draft, 77 team, only won 6 games, Zach. Okay? They weren't that great. It was a very disappointing team, okay? That was one of those teams that people thought was going to be a national title contender and then went 6-4-1. So, but again, you start getting over 5 or 6 guys drafted. You're doing things the right way. It's good for recruiting. I mean, look, I know it's all about NIL, but if all things are equal, what are you going to look at? Relationships, player development. Player development is always going to be at the forefront because you have to assume Florida, Georgia, Alabama, they're all going to kind of have similar numbers, NIL numbers for a lot of these top guys. So what can kind of set you over? Now, the thing is, those schools are getting a lot of guys drafted too. So I don't know that pushes Florida ahead of them, but it keeps Florida from falling behind them. And that's important too. So the development is there. I think it's anytime you have 5 or more guys drafted, I don't think that's a bad thing. You want to keep it going. You want more guys in the league making more money. Can any of these guys be stars? That you also need that too, Zach, because you want to be able to put together those graphics that show kids, here's how much our players are making in the NFL. And right now, can you imagine Alabama's with the guys they've had drafted in the last 10, 12 years? So Florida needs to get to that level. But I think you look ahead to next year, and Florida's got a lot of potential draft picks for next year too.
No doubt.
Probably guys that could go higher. Maybe a guy like Caleb Banks. Sapp's a guy that would get drafted. J. Michael Sturdivant, big year for him. This is a year to get him back on everybody's radars, again. So
Jake Slaughter, Barber, they're going to,
Right. Yeah, that's right. Huge year for those guys. So,
so we'll see if we think it maybe 8, 9 picks that they can get up to. We'll watch it all play out and have you guys covered at Gators Online. And Keith, I'm going to put you on the spot as the Gator historian at Gators Online. I expect you to spit this out. The first pick for Florida in the 1978 draft was
Wes Chandler.
Yes.
Yeah, can you give me something hard here? I mean, I think
who was the last pick in the 1978 draft?
It was the punter that went to the New York Jets, I think.
Look at you, Alan Williams.
Yeah.
In the 12th round.
Oh, God, that would have been 13th or 14th or something like that. Maybe even – I don't remember how many rounds there were. I wasn't that old back then, to be honest with you.
But that's a pretty good guy out of that 78 class, Wes Chandler.
Well, I think Wes Chandler – and by the way, Florida's never had a number 1 draft pick. Never had a number 1 overall pick. A couple guys at number 2, a few guys at number 3. I think Steve Spurrier was at number 3. But Wes Chandler, I would put him as I think the older Gator fans would say he's a top 10 talent all time. In terms of talented guys all time to play for Florida, Wes Chandler was the AFC Rookie of the Year, All-Pro, Pro Bowler, all that stuff. He's got to be near the top of the list. So, great player.
No doubt. And we had a great guest today in Joe Tipton. We appreciate him joining us. We covered a lot of ground on this show. I got one more ad read to get to before we get out of here with you guys. I want to give a shout out to myperfectfranchise.net as we do each and every week. Some exciting news from our good friend Andy. He's a big baseball fan, and from his line of work, he's seen firsthand the fantastic traits baseball players bring to the franchise world. Andy is offering up to a donation of $500 to $1,000 to Florida's Baseball NIL Collective. If anyone from our site purchase a franchise through Gators Online, we think that this is a cool opportunity to help the baseball program. Now is the perfect time to contact Andy to learn more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership, you can head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more, or call or text Andy anytime at 404-973-9901.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of the Gators Online Show. I am Keith Niebuhr. That is Zach Alverde. We appreciate everybody stopping by. Don't forget to go down below and hit the like button and subscribe, and also leave a comment. Tell your friends about the show. And like I said, we're rolling out more of these shows. We hope you're enjoying them. Zach, great job as always. And thanks to Joe Tipton. That will do it for this episode of the Gators Online Show. Take care, everybody, and have a great weekend.